Hi all, Lee here. Welcome back to the channel. So the last video I finished off the body of my #1 production guitar. This video I'm going to start the neck. I've actually already made a brief start on it, but I'll show you what I've done. So just as a reminder, obviously here's my headstock design, which I think is unique as far as I can tell. At least it's not on any of the really big manufacturers. I'm using maple for the neck. I've already made some cuts on the neck already. And I've got a piece of rosewood. This is a slightly different piece. As you can see, it's much lighter than normal rosewood. I really like the colour of this one. It's sort of an orangey pinky colour, which is quite nice. So what we need to do first is I'll get the camera down here. We'll take a look at what I've done so far. But primarily it's going to be putting the truss rod in. So that's going to be the first job. Let's get the router set up and the truss rod ready. So as you can see, I've already made a start on the neck. So I've already drawn the outline of the headstock of my design, as you can see. I've also put some pilot holes in just so I can get all the measurements correct for the headstock. Pilot holes for the tuners. So the next job really is to get the truss rod in, and I've set up the router. It just has to go in at 10 millimeters. It's a 10 millimeter deep truss rod. So that's the next job, and then we will glue the fretboard on. Remember, this fretboard is a piece of rosewood, but it's a slightly different type, so it's much lighter. It's a sort of light reddy colour, and I really like the colour of this one. So let's get the router on, cut out this, and put the truss rod in, and we'll glue it all together. So that job's done, just to make sure it fits in nicely. As you can see, it fits in perfectly. This is really good. So the next job is now to glue the fretboard on top, redraw the center line once that's glued, and then we'll draw the shape of the neck and we'll cut it out. So remember that my neck is 43 millimeter to 57 millimeter. 24 frets, 10-inch radius. So the next job now is to get this lined up and glued on. So let's get the truss rod in. Put a bit of tape over the truss rod hole so it doesn't fill with glue. Right, now we have to get the fretboard on and clamp it down. Well, actually first I probably want to peel off the tape. So okay, so that's the first one. Just make sure this is lined up. You have to be a little careful when you're clamping this down because obviously it's floating on the glue, and when you clamp it shifts it all around. So I want to make sure this edge is nice and square, because the better I can do it now, the less sanding and I need to do later to try and correct any overhang. So that looks pretty good to me. So we'll just carry on and get some more clamps on here. Okay, that looks pretty good. So what we do now is wait, and we'll come back to this a bit later. So the fretboard's now glued onto the neck. I'm really happy with how it's looking so far. As you can see, I've already drawn out the fret markers where I need to cut the fret slots and also the shape of the neck. So before I do anything else, I think the next thing to do is to cut the actual shape of the neck out. And then after that, I'll cut the fret slots deep enough before I radius the fretboard, so that once the fretboard's radiused, I still have a mark where the fret slot should be, and then I can just finish them off slightly. I always prefer to do the fret slot cutting while the fretboard is still perfectly flat rather than on the radius surface. I find it's much easier for me to make a mistake when I'm trying to cut on the radius. So let's do that first, then we'll cut the shape of the neck out, and then we'll start cutting the fret slots in. So the first cuts are now made. It's looking really good. So what I like to check is just the glue line, just to make sure there's no gaps or weirdness there, and it's glued perfectly. It's like a solid continuous line between the two different pieces of wood. So that's a really good start. So the next thing I want to do now is cut the fret slots in almost to their maximum depth. I like to do that before the radiusing, as I mentioned earlier, because I find it easier to cut the slots now. And then after that, I'll just finish off the sanding, and I'll carve this curved edge and round off the corners and just make sure it fits into the body correctly, nice and firmly. So let's get on and cut these fret slots. I'll just clamp a straight edge against the fret just to make it easier to run the saw through it. So that's how I keep it nice and straight. I'm sure there's probably some sort of device or jig you can use to get the fret slots done, but this has worked for me, so I'll keep doing it like this for now. Okay, so that is about it. All the fret slots have now been cut. It's all looking good. What I'm going to do is where the fret markers go, I've already made a small mark right in the center. I'm just going to drill into those with a very thin drill bit, like a pilot hole, almost to the depth of the fretboard wood. And that's just so once I've radiused and sanded everything down, I can see exactly where the center is. I won't have to remark or anything because I'm really happy with where all the dots are. All the lines are perfectly straight. It's looking really good so far. So this is the first time I've used my new sander. I'm just going to turn it on now. Let's test it out properly, in anger as it were. I've got a few things I need to do on here. So obviously to cut out the curves in the headstock and also just to round off the end, and then we'll start making sure it fits into the body. So let's get on and do that now. So it's the first time I've used that spindle sander and it is amazing. I can't believe I've gone so long without owning one. So my recommendation to anyone new to building guitars out there, I recommend getting one of those spindle, or it's called a bobbin sander as well. Amazing, it does straight lines, curves, everything. So as you can see, the results here, really happy with it. It's put the curves in nicely, everything's looking really good. Even the end where I need to slot this into the guitar, it was very easy to do. So it's pretty much complete now. So what I'll do is I'll bring this video to an end here. The next video, obviously we've still got a lot more to do on the neck. So I need to put the frets in, I need to put the inlays in, I need to use the radius jig and the neck carve jig. So there's still lots to do on here. But so far, thanks to that new sander, everything is looking really good. So I'll leave this here and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.